Hello everyone, we have a special video today for you. I am doing an interview with a friend and a colleague, Katrina Clark. The reason why I wanted to have this conversation with Katrina is because she brings a very fresh, interesting, and I would say even a slightly radical approach to tarot. She combines her work as an embodiment coach and somatic trauma coach with tarot. And we're going to delve into that in a moment. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Katrina. Katrina is a certified somatic trauma coach, sexological body worker, Reiki master, and a professional tarot reader. In her work, she combines her multifaceted training and decades of personal and professional experience to help her clients find clarity and move through stuckness, heal complex childhood trauma, and reconnect back to their authentic self. Katrina lives with her family in the north of Scotland, and in her spare time she loves hill walking with her friends and spending lots of quality time with her family. Oh, Katrina, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today, giving your time and having this conversation with me. I think this will be so amazing to do together. How are you feeling?
Oh, thanks, Maria. Yeah, I'm well, thanks. I'm well. Just sitting in my cabin in the garden in my lovely little she cave.
Yeah, oh, that's lovely. Yeah, so Katrina, you've got so much experience in so many things that you do, and I would love to talk about so many of those. Today, obviously, like we know that we want to talk about tarot, but I think all these things, they merge, you mix them in your work, and I think it's just so fascinating. And yeah, so I would love to delve into how you combine two of those aspects, which is the tarot and the somatic work, because I think this is so fresh and something that I just never heard of before, and I didn't even consider that can be done. As someone who like doesn't know anything about tarot, I couldn't imagine how that can work really. So kind of to start with, just wanted to kind of ask you how tarot came into your life, and also I saw your email and you mentioned that you have 30 years of experience with tarot. I was like, how are you old enough to have 30 years of experience? It's crazy. So yeah, if you can talk about like how that kind of emerged in your life, the tarot, how it
Yeah,
came to you.
yeah, for sure. I know 30 years, that blows my mind too. So yes, I was in my 20s when I discovered tarot. I'm in my 50s now,
Oh my gosh.
and it was really just through friends, just the circle of friends I was in at the time were using tarot. Some were reading
Hmm.
professionally, so it would be a kind of social thing. We would sit down and kind of look at the cards, and they would do little mini readings, and then they would be reading professionally. And so it was always in that circle, and that's when I first started picking up on it and getting really interested in it. And I used it for many years just for myself, just for my own guidance, for my own inspiration. Um, and I didn't realize how supportive it was until I looked back and realized that it actually got me through quite a lot of really difficult times in my life. It was a
Hmm.
constant source of guidance that I could easily refer to.
That's nice.
When
Yeah.
I backpacked in Australia in my 20s, I always had a pack of cards with me. There was always a tarot deck in my backpack somewhere.
Wow. Oh, that's so nice. Wow, I didn't know that you were backpacking in Australia. That's really cool. I can imagine like you being in wilderness and just like pulling up your tarot card and laying it out on the dusty ground of
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I used to read for people on buses and things. You know, I'd be on like the Greyhound bus, and I would do little mini readings for people that were around that were traveling, and people I would, just hang out with. It was a great little way to meet people and way to connect with people also. And I could earn a little bit of money from it for my travels.
Hmm.
It bought me all my noodles.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Wow, that is so amazing. Yeah, because I feel like because tarot has that like predictive aspect to it that people kind of associate tarot with a lot of the time. I think it's just something that we just have so much curiosity about as human species, right? Like it's like, oh, tell me my future, or like tell me what's gonna happen. And I think that's like such a nice way to like connect with people and communicate and make friends and make money. That's really good as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I think I mean, the predictive side of tarot is a really interesting side, and I think it's mostly known for that. It's
Yeah.
mostly known as a predictive tool, and people tend to really lean into that.
Yeah.
And I read like that for a long time, you
Yeah.
know, and what happened was over time is that it became very limiting, and I
Yeah.
didn't understand why I wasn't enjoying it so much anymore. I didn't understand why it was just becoming quite small and stuck. And that's why I gave up, really, because the overly predictive readings became very disempowering for people, and
Yeah.
that's not something I was enjoying so much. So the questions would be, you know, does he love me? Are we going to get back together? All that,
Wow.
which I know is
Yeah.
really important for people going through relationships. Um, but I just felt it really limited and disempowering and
Yeah.
a little bit irresponsible as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, like, why people even come to tarot in the first place. Obviously there is that curiosity aspect, but I felt like from that personal standpoint, I'm thinking, if you're coming for a tarot reading and you asking for that sort of future predicting guidance, it's almost like putting a responsibility on the cards and saying, well, I didn't make that decision, I didn't make that happen, it was meant to be because the cards told me that it's going to be. And what I find interesting is like kind of thinking about kind of that chicken and egg kind of question where are the things happening because they were predicted by tarot, or have the tarot gave you a guidance and then you manifested that reality because you were kind of turning it around in your head because the cards told you that that's going to happen. And yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if there is an answer really to that question, but I just always pondered that, like, are we just manifesting the things that we're told in the
Yes,
reading?
yeah, absolutely. And it's a good question. I think my experience of that is I think neither of those things really happen.
Mm.
I think that kind of reading gives a little bit of a kind of a little bit of a dopamine boost. You know, it's a little bit of a warm hug. It feels great at the time. We feel inspired because it's also positive.
Right.
And then that energy will drop after a couple of days. And the truth is, not much will actually happen in either way.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, it's a conversation, and it gives a little bit of a soothing balm.
Yeah.
No real kind of embodied movement or
True.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 I've also known like I've had one, obviously apart from with yourself, I had only one experience with tarot and it wasn't a very good one, in a sense of like the person was predictive, but also from their filter they were giving me their opinion essentially, and I thought, oh, that's not very nice. And then also the kind of two experiences that I know of from other people was always like negative. People were told like, oh, your husband is going to die or something like that, or like they would get a picture of the hangman, the card of the hangman, and they would be like, oh, that's death, like that's death of a person or something, like, and then I don't know why, but their partners would die like a short while after that. And in my experience, at least, because that's what I've heard, it kind of puts a really negative thought in my head about tarot and like what it does and what it means. And it's like, oh, I'd rather steer away from that. So I think it's just fascinating how different everyone's experience is with tarot.
yeah, absolutely. And it does have that history, it does have that reputation. We can't deny that that is
Yeah.
around. There's a lot
Mm.
of myth and a lot of, I call it myth and legend around tarot, you know, all these
Yeah.
kind of shadowy aspects of it and people having these experiences. And I think it does have that history because it's really difficult to actually look at the exact history of tarot. If you look at any decent kind of writing on it, and those who are really, you know, renowned in the field, they will all say the same thing. No one can trace its history. You come up with different answers the whole time. It's really interesting. We know 15th century Italy, it was kind of emerging then. That's the closest we can get. And it was being used then. But then the question is, well, how did they know? Where did the cards come from? How did they know what to do with them? You know,
Right. Right.
so many questions. We just don't know um, its
Yeah.
original intention. So I think as soon as it got around the esoteric, and of course, as soon as the church got hold of it, that was it. It was the work of the devil, and it was terrible because the church couldn't really control, and people were using it to map their own stories and look at their own experiences. And
Wow.
I guess that becomes really threatening for organizations who want to control and manipulate. So what we know today is that it is a tool for personal development, for inspiration, for guidance. But back then, that would have been a very, very threatening idea and concept.
Yeah.
So I think what happened is it went underground, and the church made it the work of the devil.
Yeah.
And that's still around. It's still in the field somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. I know that even because my mom, she went to a tarot session like when she was in her 30s, maybe 20s, late 20s. And I remember like when I was little, she would tell me about that, but then she would refer it as like a sin because I was born as a Russian Orthodox, and in our religion it was a sin. Like you should not be going to those things, because as you say, like it's the work of the devil, right? And that's really interesting, yeah, how far that goes into history, how where the roots are from that, and then that's just incredible, really, isn't it? How things can be
Yes,
skewed.
absolutely. And that kind of that negative connotation around witchcraft is still there, but we know that that still lives today.
Yeah, yeah. So how would you kind of describe what? Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
No, go on, because I think you're going to ask the question I was going to answer.
I was just going to ask, how can you describe what tarot is really like when you shuffle the cards and you lay them out? What happens? Like what are you tapping into as a practitioner when you are doing a reading? What is tarot in that sense?
Brilliant, brilliant question. Yeah. So I guess if we strip it right back and we look at what tarot is physically, it's actually just images on cards. That's literally what it is. It's an image on a card. There's 78 cards. They all have an image. Are these cards kind of magical and mythical and da da da? No, they're actually just mass-produced pieces of cards. That's all they are. You can buy them on Amazon. There's nothing magical or mystical about that. Let's just the truth, right? So let's
Right.
not try and pretend it's anything more than just an image on a card. So let's start there. And then what we do, of course, with those images is we can use those images to tap into places that we can attune to, that we can resonate with, that perhaps trigger an emotional response or a desire, or a memory, a need. And that's really where we start to meet tarot in a really interesting way. So we can start to use the images and the stories to map out a storyboard of our lives, to resonate with, to feel some comfort with, or to ask for guidance from. I think it's probably one of the most underrated tools for personal development.
Yeah, well, I guess it makes sense given the history and how we've viewed it throughout for all these centuries. We've viewed it as this like evil thing. We don't kind of then think, oh well, it can be good for my personal development, right? When it's got so much history around it, and so yeah, when you kind of go into the session, and like when you gave me a reading, you were shuffling the cards as I was setting the intention, and I wonder if that's kind of, are you basically just attuning to my intention in that moment as a practitioner, and that's how kind of the cards lay themselves out, the top cards, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, excuse me, yes, I am attuning to you, but I would be attuning to you in the way that I would attune to you if I wasn't working with the cards.
Okay.
So I'm attuning to you as a practitioner, as a therapist who wants to hold space for you, who wants to create a safe space for you. When it comes to bringing the cards into that, when we shuffle the cards and when we ask questions of the cards, essentially what we're doing is asking for whatever card comes up, be the card that we attune to. Now that doesn't mean that it's particularly magical or there's a bigger esoteric purpose there. Any one of the 78 cards can be really, really useful because we've had so much life experience in all of these cards that they're all going to have a meaning for us. Anyone is going to have meaning for us. We'll be able to resonate with the story of every card because we've had that experience at some level. And I think the contradiction here is really, really interesting because although we can say it doesn't really matter, any card will give the guidance that we need because we'll be able to look at our response to it. We can't deny that there are many, many times in tarot when it actually just feels like it's the absolute right card at the right time. And I can't actually explain that at all.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah.
It's happened to me this morning. It took my breath away today, and and I just can't explain that.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. Yeah, because that when you gave me the reading as well, I was blown away by every card. It just felt like it was so relevant, and I think like with you as well, it's just such a different way that you decode, read into cards, the messages that they share, like the way you then transcribe them to me. It was just so powerful, and it was very thought-provoking, and yeah, I just really found that fascinating. And maybe before we go into that, kind of talking more about the process and the meanings and the cards and the pictures of the cards, I want to kind of take a step back and talk about, so you obviously took a break from tarot. Was it 2016, I think you shared, or 15? And then you went into the whole world of embodiment work and trauma therapy, and is that when the sexological body work came in as well? Yeah, and so it's obviously you did a lot of that training, and then is it this year, I think, that you realized kind of that actually I can combine the two? So like what happened in that whole process? Can you talk a little bit about when you realized like, oh, actually I can combine the two worlds together?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I kind of left tarot round about 2016, if you like, unconsciously, because of what I said earlier. I was becoming a little bit, I found it very limiting, and the way I was using it was very limiting, and I didn't know what else to do with it. And then I went and did my training with sexological body work and started working with much more embodied somatic processes, and did a lot of training over 3-4 years in that way. So I started to understand how we can, stay present, obviously, how we can start to turn inward a lot more, and, be our own guiding light, move closer to our own authentic self. So I was becoming more inward rather than looking outward, which is what tarot was asking me to do beforehand. It was all, predictive, what's happening in the external world and how that's going to impact. What we know, of course, with somatic work is that we move from the inside out, if you like. We start processing what's present and what's in us, what's available to us. So just very recently, earlier this year, tarot, it just started coming back. It just started popping up everywhere. I can't explain it. I just started seeing tarot everywhere, and friends started asking for readings again, and then it just dropped in. It just kind of just dropped back into my whole being. And when I started working with it again, that's when I noticed my new self coming through. Like, how about if we use this and keep it in the present? We turn it towards our experience rather than out towards what might be coming in. And then a whole new language formed. So the way of working with it now for me is less of the interpretation and more of the unfolding story that might be happening for the client as a response to that card. So it's really, really useful when working. So my therapy practice, and you'll know this as well as a fellow therapist, Maria, we often work with clients who are very stuck in their body, who are very stuck in their emotional world and can't identify emotion. They can't identify what they're feeling because it's been pushed down for so long. So when you look at an image of one of the tarot cards and describe what the story is there, that can really move things. It can really unlock something because there's an image to focus on, a story can be discussed and created, and then you'll find there's a natural response to that, and it helps soften, it helps bring in a little sensation, a little felt sense back to the body.
Yeah, I've experienced that in the session with you when, if you remember, that one of the cards you pulled out was I think it was three pentacles, and the image of that church, and the pentacles are in the window of that stained glass window, and then outside of the church there's these beggars and like an old person, like a disabled person, and it's snowing, and oh my God, it was like, PTSD from childhood. It's like, oh my God, I remember being outside the church, seeing beggars outside my church, and then going to church, and obviously Russian churches are all golden inside, and it was just literally like, wow, like there was so much, I think it was like a sense of fear in my body that came up, and you didn't even tell me anything about the card yet. You just pulled it up, and it was just like a flush of emotion and bodily sensation of like, oh my God, no, please get it away from me. And that was just so fascinating. I didn't expect that to happen. And I think even if, when I've seen tarot cards before, I probably would have had bodily reactions as well, but I wouldn't kind of relate the two. I wouldn't think, oh, well, it's because I'm seeing the card, or like there's meaning in that, in the fact that I'm feeling something in my body, because there was too much disconnect. Whereas, yeah, when you brought that up and you told me about kind of, yeah, you can really look at your reaction to the image itself, like it's so important. Like it didn't even occur to me before you said it, that's relevant.
That's right, and that's exactly the embodied practice of tarot, isn't it? We're having a response to a story, to an image that allows us to then start journeying through the memories and the unfinished business, the trauma imprints that are there for us, so it can awaken our senses. And of course, each card tells a different story. And as I said earlier, the response is they're telling us of our human experience. They're showing us all our joy and our love and our care, but they're also showing us what is challenging and difficult and traumatic. It shows us where there can be conflict and how we can manage conflict. It shows us where we can perhaps have more expansion spiritually, as well as the mundane day to day. So it shows us the vast experiences that we have as human beings having this in this kind of spiritual body. So when we look at the images, we know them. Yeah, they're only telling us what we already know, and they're just bringing that to the surface for more investigation. And what you do with it is entirely up to you. So there's no predictive way for you to be with that image. You just look at your own response, and then it becomes your own responsibility. And that's where it's empowering now. And that's what I'm really excited about is how empowering that can be.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I as I said, the experience that I had with you was really so eye-opening, and the questions you were asking, the cards were kind of, you I think the way you said it was like, the cards are asking you to look at it that way, or they're asking this question, and it was just really interesting because it really felt like, it's almost like the cards, they were my friend, and they were like, look at this and look at that, and they were really, it's like the energy of the cards was like they were really there for me, like they were trying to help me and guide me, but they weren't telling me anything. They were just saying, look at it this way and that way, and it opened up my mind so much, the kind of questions you asked and the meaning of the cards, and it was like, some of them were just so empowering. Like one of them was the Hermit card, and when you talked about the meaning of it, going on your own journey of that, don't look at the way everyone else does things, do it your own way, and it's okay to be alone. The card itself, like the image, was like so empowering, whereas for another person, I can imagine looking at that card, they might feel scared because like, I'm all alone and nobody's there to support me, right? But for me, it was like, whoa, yes, I'm strong, I'm alone, and I'm on a mountain, I'm conquering things, and I find it so fascinating how two different people would react to the same card in such a different way, in a different context as well. If it was, I don't know, an intention about a relationship, maybe I wouldn't react in the same way, right? But because it was about my business, it was like, oh, empowerment, and really a sense of like, I can do this, and I can trust myself. So yeah, I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah, that's it. And it's the relationship to that card, to that story, that makes all the difference, isn't it? So the card, the story is just asking you to look at what's there for you. And as you say, someone else would have a different response because of their history and where they are in their nervous system. So it's not predicting or asking you to do anything. It's just opening up that inquiry for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's that inquiry that can then lead you to look at what you actually need to bring in to support, what resource you need.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so fascinating how, as you kind of mentioned, is like when you're stuck, like that's how I felt before the session, you know, coming into it with the intention of my business. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. It's like this feeling of like I'm spinning the wheels and I'm going around in the same loop, and the cards are like a little line that goes out of the circle, and it kind of says, well, how about this way, you know? And you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize I can come out of the circle, you know? I'm not stuck in this loop. I can actually look much more broadly, and that's what I found so interesting, and that's why I think your approach is so useful, because it's really embodied, because it's, as you said, like it's so easy to look externally and look constantly for that guidance outside of yourself, and not have any sense of like your own compass and your own internal guidance system. Whereas this is a really useful way of like, okay, when my internal guidance system is confused, this is like, okay, well, let's bring a card in, and that can really help you to see something outside. But then let's go back inside again, rather than stay out here, kind of floating.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Tarot will always ask us when we use it as an embodied practice to look within rather than out. As soon as we start looking out, we've lost our own responsibility, we've lost our own direction, and we've just become very disempowered then. But if we use it as a way to stay present and look at what we're with and the possibilities of what's there, then the whole thing changes. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to how you carry that session as well, because if another practitioner doesn't have that same kind of understanding of tarot or belief around tarot, they will choose their language differently as well when they will kind of look at the cards and tell you about the cards. They won't use the language that kind of makes you feel like you should go inward. It will still keep you outside here, and again, like it will be that predictive kind of external thing going on, and so I feel like, yeah, it's such an important difference between you and so many other tarot readers who don't have that embodied approach to it as well.
And there's a fine line. There is a fine line, because tarot is used so predictively that it doesn't take much to cross that line and go back down that path again, because the client will somewhere have a memory of that, or an expectation of that, or a history with tarot that suggests that. So they will start to come in with an intention to go down that road, feeling that's the right way and that's what's going to give the most. So there's a real discipline in keeping it present and keeping it just you know, within the experience of that person and in their internal landscape. It takes a lot of discipline to hold that space there. Yeah, it's like not getting caught up in the story, you know.
Right, yeah. Which is like the huge distinction between normal therapy as well and somatic work that we do, isn't it?
Exactly. So if we keep it like that, and you can also use tarot consciously. It's not just about shuffling cards and taking them randomly and moving from there. You can consciously use the entire deck to map out like an aerial shot of where you're at. You know, so if you know the deck, and you know the experience that you're in and what you want to look at, what's difficult, say it's a work issue or something around a relationship, then you would deliberately go and choose those cards that tell that story of exactly what is happening in your life right now. And you can set a little kind of altar around that and just sit and look at your life in images. This is my experience of what's happening right now. And then of course you can consciously go and bring other cards in to complement that, or give direction on how you can move through it and what you could do differently, and how you bring something new to it, you know. So there's great ways to work with tarot. It can be really, really creative, and it can be wonderful for manifesting, for just sitting with an intention of a card and get into the felt sense of what that is.
Wow, yeah, this is also just so different to what I've experienced. Like the basic understanding I had of tarot is just so vastly different. Yeah, because it does remove that mystic, witchy kind of aspect when you talk about it in that embodied sense, and it's a lot more grounding, and it's like, oh yeah, it's not like this sort of spirit. It is spiritual, but it's not like, yeah, it's a witchy thing. It's very much a real tool that you can just that you use, rather than kind of almost, I feel like people all often put it on a pedestal almost, and kind of treat it like this authority thing, authority figure almost, which, yeah, the way you talk about it, it really brings it
yeah.
down to the pedestal.
Yeah, but I think we like to do that with most things. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our own authority. We don't trust our own process. We don't trust how we feel. We haven't been taught to understand how we can process feeling and be with feeling. So we tend to push everything out, whether that's onto a therapist, or you fix me, you do something, you say something, it's going to make me feel better, or to tarot or any other modality. We tend to push out first because we simply don't trust ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And yeah, so how do you envision kind of your journey with tarot continuing on, and what plans do you have for that, and your visions?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna start teaching again. So I used to teach way back in the day, round about 2010, 2012 time, maybe a little bit later, and quite literally just around the kitchen table with manuals. I would print tarot manuals, fantastic old school days. And it was great. The women that came together and the groups came together were fantastic, because it brings up so much discussion and so much sharing for people. So I would like to start teaching again. I'm going to start teaching again towards the end of the year. And now, of course, I'm going to use online resources, and there's many new ways that we can come together now, which are fantastic. So I think starting with some just beginners tarot, and I would like to start it with beginners tarot for yourself, for using it for your own journey, your own personal journey, your own development, getting to know it for you as a guide, as a tool. And then if it feels right, moving on, and how you can use that working with others. But I think you have to know it for yourself first. If you don't know it for yourself first, you're going to be missing out, that whole foundation of integrated knowledge.
Right, yeah. Again, it's like same with therapy, isn't it? If you don't do your own sessions, and if you don't do your own deep work, you can't really help people.
You got to do your own work, right?
Right. Exactly, yeah. And I think especially with tools like that, I think it's just so important to get them to know in and out. Otherwise, it's more of like this kind of superficial place that this comes from, isn't it? If you don't know it deeply through your own experience. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Yeah, and you've got 30 years of that experience, which I still can't believe. Like, it's crazy.
I don't think I can either, Maria. I mean, that's just sounds a little bit crazy to me too. I want to come back to just briefly come back to what you were saying about the kind of witchcraft and spiritual side. And I think I don't want to deny that. I think that it can be really useful for people. And I think tarot can integrate really well around that as well. So just to kind of nod to readers who are using it in many different ways. And I think it's up to everyone just to find the person that's right for them. In the way that there's many therapists out there working in different ways, everyone will resonate in different ways of being, in different ways of working. And that's what makes it really interesting.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I thank you for sharing that. Yeah, is there anything else that you feel you want people to know about tarot, or about specifically the work that you do, or anything else that you felt like kind of you wanted to share, but maybe we didn't go into that direction, or anything at all that you want to add on?
It might be useful just to say something about how this could work. So that we mentioned this card earlier. I was working with this card yesterday, and I did a little kind of video thing about it. So I was really with this card a lot when I was walking in the morning, and I was listening to I was listening to Gabor Mate, one of my teachers, and he was talking about perception, and how we can move with perceptions of how we believe ourselves to be, how we believe the world to be, and live from that place. And of course, that always needs to be questioned. because we're not in our most authentic self when we're moving from perceptions of the world. And as he was talking, I was thinking of the judgment card, thinking, wow, yeah, the judgments and the perceptions we push out to others are really significant, and they have an enormous impact on how we perceive our world and what we make the world mean. So then our mind begins to create our world, and that's not necessarily the most authentic way for us to be, because it denies who we are. So the judgment card, if you look at it here, you can see how that moves through the judgment card. So you can see how these people here, it's a harsh image. It's not a pretty image at all, you know, and you can see why tarot gets its bad reputation with these old school traditional decks. There are more contemporary decks that make this much softer looking and great, but I quite enjoy the old school way. So this angel here is calling upon these people who look like they're actually being resurrected, like they've died a death somewhere, and he's bringing them back to life. And the word judgment, of course, is suggesting that our judgments are just dulling us and taking us out of our life and actually removing us further from who we are and from healthy connection with others. If we're judging ourselves harshly, we can't really love ourselves. If we're judging others, we can't connect in a really authentic, loving way, because the judgments will get in the way the whole time. So when Gabor Mate was talking about perception, it reminded me of these judgments. So this is about very much the story is asking, how can we let go of judgments? How can we let go of past judgments and everything that's got us to this point that has felt very, very removed from our most loving selves when we're surrounded in judgment. So when we talk about letting go of the past, I think one of the best ways we can do that is to look at forgiveness. We start to forgive ourselves. We start to forgive ourselves of past judgments, how we've judged ourselves, how we've judged others, and the consequences of that, how stuck we get in that, and how small our world becomes. So it's not forgiving others. Is if we can forgive ourselves, then there's no need to bring forgiveness to others. We don't have that judgment, oh, I forgive you. That itself's very judgment. So once we have that layer of forgiveness for ourselves, we can then move to acceptance. I forgive myself for what I didn't know. I forgive myself for what wasn't available to me, for the behavior, for the language I was using, for the denial I was in. And then there comes acceptance. And when we have acceptance, we have compassion for all of who we are, and we can then bring that to our relationships with others. So when we see this resurrection, we're being it's saying you can resurrect yourself from all your old judgments with forgiveness and acceptance. And I think that's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and I'm just looking at the card as well this whole time, and it's just so interesting all the ways in which you could interpret that as well. Because when I first looked at it, I thought, I don't remember what it's called in English, but there's a story of a boy with a flute that all the mice are kind of following him around or something, you know. So it's like a puppet master type thing.
Yes, yeah.
And I thought, like, that's what is kind of represented here, and I was thinking, how does that relate to judgment? And so, like, these are the images that were in my mind about this image of like someone who's like a puppet master, who's like playing the music, and everyone is kind of, you know, what's the word? Like, again, treating him like an authority of some kind, or glorifying this angel, or I don't know who that person is. Yeah, so that's kind of the image I got from that as well.
Yeah, of course. So you're kind of following an authority figure, which in itself is very limiting, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. It's just so fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And what was really interesting is I was working with this yesterday, and then this morning as we sat down to talk, I shuffled the cards. It was actually a completely different deck. And this card popped back up.
Wow.
And that is just that little bit of magic that appears in tarot that we can never explain. So so it's not the cards that are magical. It's not for me, any kind of esoteric movement. It's actually what we bring to it. There's a little magic in what we bring to it.
No, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I do like to think of it like in terms of more like, I don't know, like a quantum field type thing. You know, it's like a potential field of energy, and like when you shuffle the cards, you're kind of shuffling all this potential, and when you're setting an intention, the potential field arranges itself, and then you pick out the card that you need to look at in this moment, and then sometimes it's the same card, right, in 2 days in a row.
Yeah, that's right. And so we can use it as a magical tool. We can use it as a therapeutic tool, as a
Mm.
spiritual tool. We get to choose what we want to put on it. There's no right or wrong,
Yeah,
and
that sounds so amazing. And I do feel like if you were to practice it more and play around with the cards more, as you deepen in that connection with the cards, I think you would really understand the ebb and flow of this process and the depth of the cards. Because I feel like, because I'm so inexperienced, I mean, even in this conversation, I feel like something is like already opening up in my mind, but I feel like in the process of kind of doing it, there's just so much. It's like an iceberg. You just don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's under the water. You know, that huge piece of iceberg, you only have this like surface level ice that's visible, and underneath you just don't know what's there until you go down and you go under the water and you explore it.
exactly. And I think what happens after a session with tarot is really important, that you actually start to bring some action points in, because and the same in any kind of therapy session that we have, when we start to move to responsibility and bring in some positive action, that's when positive change occurs. But
Yeah.
if we're just moving through our stuff without actually following up with any action and responsibility, then we remain stuck.
Right.
And I think one way tarot is really useful for that is you can keep the focus because you have the image of the card to remind you of what you're working with and what you're working on, and you can start getting really involved in that, so it stays as a constant reminder for you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because it's like sometimes you can come to a tarot session because you feel stuck, but then if you don't actually do anything about it, you, as you said, you'll just remain stuck, and you'll continue to seek that outward kind of easy answer, right? Easy way, or like a resolution, so that you don't have to do any work. And I think even in that itself, bringing embodiment work into play like is so important, because if you are stuck and you keep coming to tarot sessions and nothing seems to change, it's like, well, what's happening in your body? Why do you feel like you can't change anything? Why are you not taking any action? What's the limitation there in the nervous system?
Yeah, absolutely. What I tend to do with whatever I'm working on personally within myself is I tend to keep the cards that represent that out so I can see them. I keep
Yeah.
them in my space, and I can actively work with them as a practice every day until I feel that I've moved on from that now. I've had some kind of completion there, and I can start bringing that out into the world. And what does that look like? What are my needs, and how can I meet my needs there and
Mm.
bring that to the world?
Very interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, for anyone who's watching, if you would like to experience a tarot session, obviously Katrina has online sessions, but also I know that you're offering free one card tarot reading or something like that, I think it's called.
Yeah, it's a little tarot quiz. So if you go to the website, you can do a little quiz. You answer a few questions, and it will take you to a card that can really help you look at that story that's going on for you. So it's a fun, interactive thing to do, and it's a nice way, I think, for people to start engaging with tarot. So yeah, that's a
Lovely.
little free quiz on the website if you want to check it out. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, I'll put the links down below, yeah, and for your contact information. And yeah, so if you want to interact with Katrina, just go into her website. Is there any other way that you would like for people to find you, or is there maybe a social media side, or is the website the best way that people can contact you?
I would say the website's the best way. It's a little bit more personal. I prefer to have that more personal connection. I'm not really big on social media. I just don't, connect with it that well. I much prefer people just shout out, and you'll
Yeah,
you'll find more of who I am through my website, and then contacting me directly. I think
yeah.
rather than social media, that's my preferred way.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Katrina, so much for this conversation. And
You're
yeah, if
welcome.
if there's questions in the comments or anything, I'll let you know. And I'm sure Katrina will be happy to answer anything that people are asking. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. And obviously, I'll see you later anyway. But
Yeah, thank you, Maria. And I might see you on the beginner's tarot course. You have to come along, right?
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, yes, I will post about that as well. So if people want to know about your upcoming training, that would be really, really good, because that you will
Yeah.
combine the embodiment in that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's
Yes,
there's
yeah,
a there's a waiting list for that on the website. But yeah, it'd be lovely
lovely.
if you came along. That'd be great.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Katrina. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Maria. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and took a lot of insights away from this and learned something new about tarot and embodiment work. And one thing that Katrina and I, mentioned once the recording stopped, as always, stop recording and then you talk about really good stuff as well. What we mentioned is that when we're talking about embodiment work or tarot or similar things like that, it's so hard to talk about them because it is an experience. Like, it's really hard to talk about something that is an experience, something that you are feeling in your body. It's very difficult to relay that in words and convey the profoundness of it, the depth of it. So really the best way to learn about things like that is to just try it. Just go and have a session, experience it. Because then when you experience it and you feel it in your body and you understand, oh, that's what it's like, that's what it feels like, it's worth a lot more than the words that can describe that experience. It's like, you can't really describe what chocolate tastes like. You can come very close to describing it, but it's just not the same as the experience of actually putting chocolate in your mouth and eating it, right? And so this is our recommendation. If you're stuck, if you are looking for guidance and you would like to try either somatic embodiment work or Reiki or tarot, just give it a go and see for yourself what that feels like. And yeah, as I said before, I will leave the links down below for the website, for all the different links that lead you back to Katrina and the work that she does. She's amazing. She holds such a beautiful space. Her inquiry work is just as amazing as her tarot readings, and highly recommend checking her out. And if you want to work with me, I'll leave a website down below as well. And if you have any questions, please leave them down below. I will let Katrina know that you're asking something, and I'm sure she will be happy to respond to those. Or otherwise, just send her an email. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one.